welcome to the Railway Laser Lines how to build on the O-gauge marshalling yard tower light. So first thing I'll do is run through the parts that come with the kit so you're familiar with them, and to make sure that you've got all the parts. We do an inventory check, so hopefully everything will be here. So obviously there is a completed one, albeit that's Mark II. We're currently on Mark III. We could well be on Mark IV by the time this goes to production, but I'm doing the video now so I can get it out of the way. So the items that come with this kit: obviously you've got your long ladder, then you've got your 4 main parts to your tower. Now 3 are exactly the same and 1 is slightly different. The main difference is that this one here has horizontal bars going across all the way up, whereas the rest, as you can see, have no horizontal bars. And this is prototypical to the one that was at Blythe, and this is what it's based on. So this is the part, the one with the horizontal strips, is the base unit that we will be building it from, and then we'll add these parts to it as we go along, but I'll show you that shortly. We then have the top tower. So you've got 4 pieces of the top tower along with its metal framing floor, which effectively should look like a metal framing floor when you've painted it. You've got 4 rivet panels that will cover those joins there all the way around the tower, so you won't see the joins. 2 of these are slightly longer than the other 2. As you can see, these 2 are slightly smaller than those 2, because when you join this together, you'll have one end slightly longer than the other. So make sure that before you glue them on, you check to see which ones go first. These 4 pieces here are the joining sections for your tower pieces, and they go in there, there, and up there. You'll notice on the piece that you have 2 little indents there and there. This is where your ladder fits in and glues to, so you've got to make sure when you glue these in that that piece is in the same position all the way up, otherwise you're going to be in trouble. Then we have the rivet panels that will cover the top of the roof, the top of the tower light. And again, these bottom 2 are slightly smaller than the top 2. It's most probably half a millimeter shorter, so you've got to be really careful, otherwise you may end up having to do some trimming. But just again, take your time and make sure you get the right one in place. You've then got your wiring box. Now the wiring box goes at the bottom of the tower, and they were normally fitted around here on a junction. So that is the skeleton framework, and then you've got your exterior cladding that will make it look nice and flush. I have engraved the lines of the skeleton frame in there to help, but I'm not sure whether that's actually going to be of any benefit, because this thing is only 18mm by 15mm and 9mm depth, so it is tiny. That's the back panel that will affix to your tower. I have forgotten to put the hole in this one, so obviously the kit will come with a hole so you can thread your wires through if you want to. Most people may just put the wires straight down through, but I'm designing this so you could actually put your wires into the wiring box to make it look real. I'm going to give you 3 different bases: a small base, a medium base, and a large base. Looking at all the yard lights at Blythe, none of them had the same concrete base, so I thought I would do that as well. And obviously you can see where your tower goes into, also where the ladder will slot into, and then you've got your hole for your wire to come up through your board. And then last of all, you've got your rivet panels that will hide these join sections on your tower lights. And again, we've got 4 that have got a slightly smaller width rivet panel here to those 4 rivet panels there. And again, you'll realize when you've built it which ones go on which, because one side of this will be slightly wider than the other. So that's all the parts. So there's quite a few parts there, and then a lot of them, especially those rivet panels, are extremely fragile. They have been laser cut to have those rivets show, and once you painted, they will pop and they will look fantastic. So just be careful handling them, ideally with tweezers. So items needed: set of tweezers, pretty self-explanatory. I've got a zippy blade now. I'm not quite sure how this is going to come to you yet. I may well cut them all out and put them in a bag, or they may be on a template where you might have to cut them out, but the zippy blade may be handy. Some glue. Now, on the two that I've previously built, I've used the Deluxe Materials glue and glaze. It's ideal for making crystal clear windows and bonding canopies, but I have found this bonds this model board extremely well and is really, really strong. And obviously I've got a bottle of water there just to wipe my brush out. Those are the parts that you're going to need. So what we'll do now is we will start the build and show you how we can move forward. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to make the smallest item, which is the wiring junction box. So these are the 6 pieces for the wiring junction box, and all we're going to do is glue it together and end up looking like one that I've already made earlier. And I'm not going to glue that right piece on, because basically you can put your wiring in there. You might even be able to put a resistor in there, I'm not sure, but it's going to make sense to leave that off. So we will add some glue to the base. Now the base is the one with the hole, and ideally it wants to go round that way, so the hole is facing down the bottom. Add some glue around the outsides, join up the side panels. I've got a couple of pieces of MDF that I'm just going to put at a 90 degree, that will allow me to hold this in position. You only need a small amount of this glue and glaze to glue these together. So this part is really tiny, so, and you might be able to just put it in your hand and just use your fingers just to join it all together. It goes together really well, but don't put too much glue in. What I tend to do is then just glue inside and just run a bead of glue all up the edges and let it dry. So that's what we'll do, and we'll come back. So there's a small amount of glue, and the first part I've glued in. I'm using these pieces of MDF just to hold it in position and making sure it's upright at 90 degrees. I'm then going to add this one side here, so add some glue in there, and then add some glue up the side of this one, put it back and hold it there in position, let it dry for 30 seconds to a minute, then come back and do this side, do the same, and then come back and do this side. What we can do, once we've got it all in position and we're happy, we can put the top box on, but don't glue it, and that will keep it in place while it dries. And then when we come to put the last piece on, I tend to tip it on its side, so it's easier to then glue inside the little ridge, and then just pop the top on, and then just go around in the inside with some more glue, allow it to dry, and put the lid on. And there you have your little box. Now I picked it up and just ran the brush with glue on the inside to go through those joins to make it seal up properly. I'll give that a minute or so, and then I'm going to add that lid on top, just to keep it in position and make sure it's correct. So I've added the lid. I haven't glued it on. There's no need to glue it on, and I'm going to let that dry. We will come back and add all the exterior cladding shortly, but the next thing I'm going to be doing is the top part of the tower, where we can make this part while we're allowing that to dry. So while we're doing that, we'll crack on and do this part. Okay, let's move on to the top crane part, and you've got your 4 panels and your base floor, and you'll see you've got your indents where they fit into here on each one. So you just need to run a bead of glue along that line there, perhaps a tiny bit of glue inside the little holes, and then literally grab hold of this and then fit it in one. Run your brush along to get rid of any excess glue, hold it in position, and then move it over, and then do your next one, and then do your next one, and so on until you've done all 4. Once you've done all 4, you can then glue the panels together down the sides with a small amount of glue and glaze, and just use your fingers just to prise them together. This stuff's holds pretty well, and so does the model board. So you'll realize when you start doing it how easy it is. So I'm just going to hold this up, add a piece of glue down here, run a tiny little bit of glue down all those, and then I'm going to put them together, and then I'll come back and show you. So the first two are glued in position, and all I'm going to do now is just run a bit of glue with my brush up here, and then use my fingers to make sure that it is flush around the outside. Let that dry, so then you'll have a nice bond there, and then I'll carry on and do this one, and then do exactly the same, and then finally do that one, and I'll come back and show you. So just reminding you, when you glue them round, your diagonal line is going from the bottom left to the top right, bottom left to the top right, bottom left to the top right, all the way around, because then when you've glued it and you look down at the sides, you get your cross effect. If you don't do it that way around, you won't get that effect, and it will look a little bit silly. So I've glued that one on. I'm just going to run some glue along that one, pinch it to the side, allow it to dry slightly, come back and then do the final piece, and then I'll show you that. And then we have it, our top tower framework all glued in place. Now if you've got fat fingers and thumbs, when you come to glue these two pieces together, you might just want to use your tweezers and literally put your tweezers together and hold it in position while that glue bonds. It doesn't take long, and you can then work your way around. And then what I tend to do is I'll just go around on the inside, run a long bead of glue along all the edges, and then also down on the framework, down the bottom around the edges. So I'm going to let that dry. Then what we need to do is, once that's dry, is we can cover these joins. A bit unsightly, so obviously hence we've got these nice rivet panels that highlight the rivets really well, if I can get it in focus, but you'll see them when you come to do them. So that's it, we'll let that dry, and then we'll move on to the next section. So we can come back to the wiring box and add the cladding to the outside to make it look a little bit nicer. I have engraved the skeleton framework inside, so you know these goes on the inside. There's not a massive big difference in size, so I'm not sure whether it's actually a benefit at all. But the first thing you want to do is to glue the back panel. Now obviously that's got a hole, there's a hole in there, and they need to line up. Add just a tiny amount of glue, and what I've done, I've got a paper clip. I'll just pull it out, and I'm going to push it through and make sure that the hole's in the same place, and then I'm just going to add a tiny little bit of glue to them all, pick it up, do it with my fingers, and I think you'll be able to do this quite easily with your fingers, because this thing's tiny. It's 18mm by 15 by 9, and then I'm going to put, once those outside pieces are dry, I'm then going to put the skeleton framework back inside on the top, not glue it, and then glue the cladding to the outside of the skeleton frame, and then hopefully, fingers crossed, you'll be able to just pull that off every now and again if you want to get inside it. And obviously we've got to paint it as well. So let's crack on and glue that, and then we'll come back and show you what that looks like. But I don't think we're going to need too much glue on this one. When you come to add glue on the top part, obviously don't glue all the way around, because obviously if you do, you're going to bond this all together. So I've just put some in the middle, and I'm going to put the cladding on top. So your front part of your wiring box comes off, and obviously as you can see, that cladding is now joined to the skeleton frame. So you can literally just push it on and pull it off again if you want to detail the inside of your wiring box. So now we'll move on to the next part of the build. So we now need to fit the wiring box to the back panel. So we've got to line up the holes, and this is where your trusty paper clip comes in. So I'm just going to glue some glue around the outside here, lap it over the top, and then find the hole, move it in. Now this is 18mm wide, and I think this is 15 on the real example. If I can quickly show you, I'll show you what it looks like. as you can see, the box is actually a bit wider than the back panel. So if we can just get it a little bit either side, that should be fine. And then all we need to do then is we bond the back panel to the side of the tower frame, but we'll do that later. So I've glued that in place, and then all I've simply done is turned it over and run a small bead of glue down either of these sides just to give it that extra strength. I'm going to put that to one side and we'll come back and fix that to the side of the tower frame later. Now we head back to the top of the tower, and now we can add the rivet panels. Now you'll see this side is the side that I've joined the sides of the framework to each other, and if I turn it on its side, then the next one, this is just one panel. You cannot see any of the other panels. So this is the smaller side. Turn it over. This is where you've joined the panels to the side. So this is slightly wider. This is the longer side. So the rivet panels that are longer go down this side. The rivet panels that are smaller go down this side. So we can glue those in place. And there you have your rivet panels on place, so they'll be drying. We can put that to one side, and the next time we'll be using that is when we glue it to the top of the tower frame. So that's job done, and now it's time to move on to the tower frame and to build that. Now we move on to the exciting part, is to make the massive great big tower frame. And in the same fashion as we've done with the top of the tower frame, the gantry way, we need to make sure that all these go in the same direction around the build. So with the ladder, you need to have the section with the horizontal side pieces going up the frame. The others do not have this, so this is the ladder side. So we then need to add the connection framework in these holes here, here and here. Then we'll thread the ladder through and join it, and I'll show you where they need to join that, and then we'll move on and build the sides. So with this one flat, as you can see on the main build, hopefully I'll get my finger out of the way, on the outside the diagonal line is going from right, bottom right, to top left, and that's what we need. So if I turn it around, that one goes bottom right to top left. Turn it around, bottom right to top left. Turn it around, bottom right to top left. The reason we do that, because then if you look through it, you should see a crisscross section. There you go. If you do it the wrong way around, it will look exactly the same, and it's wrong. So we need to make sure we get this right. So this is the ladder part. So if we're going to do exactly the same, so at the moment you'll see I've got that round the wrong way. So if I turn it round the other way, that is the exterior of the tower crane, bottom right diagonal line to top left. So we bring it along and then drop it down so it's facing downward. So we know we can now add those internal joining pieces the correct way. So I'll do that and then I'll come back. What we also need to remember is when we're fitting this framework joining section in, is that the two grooves, which is where the ladder goes, are on this panel facing down with the horizontal lines. So this is where the ladder is going to come in and fit in, so make sure that that goes against the section there, also there, and also there. Just remove any excess glue along the edges with damp brush and allow this to dry. Try and get them as upright as you can. Then we'll come back and fit the ladder, and I'll show you which rungs of the ladder it needs to fit where. So the frame joining sections are now in place and starting to dry. It's time to add the ladder. Now, is there a right way or wrong way of adding the ladder? I'd say yes, but it's not the end of the world if you get it wrong. Now, the way it should be is the ladder at the bottom should have the first rung just after the joining section here. The middle section is roughly in the middle, just maybe towards the right, and then the top section, the ladder rung, is underneath the joining section. Now if you turn the ladder the other way round, you'll find that you can still get your first ladder rung there. It's not a problem. That one will be very, very similar, but you won't get this one joining up with the joining section. It would be slightly different because the gap on there I think is 5.5 mil. The gap here is 7 mil. Now obviously this section of the bottom of the framework will go into the concrete panel and these just poke inside. But again, if you get it round the wrong way, they'll still poke inside. So it's not the end of the world if you get it wrong. It's just that when you come to glue it, if you can glue the rung against the panel there and the ladder run against that one there, you're just going to get a better join, and it seems to fit better inside the framework as well. So just take your time on that, just see if you can get it right. But say it's not the end of the world if you put it around the other way, but this is the better way to do it. So I'm going to glue it in position and then allow that to dry. So I've now glued the ladder in place in the 3 positions, and I'm going to let this dry now for a good quarter of an hour. I don't want it moving, so time to have a cup of tea or whatever. Allow this to dry, and then we'll come back and then we're going to start adding the rest of the frame, but we'll only do a part of it and then I'll mention why. But I'm going to come back, and the next piece we're going to do is the piece that goes on top of these joining sections, not on the sides. I've done the 2 demo models and it's worked better doing the top part next, so we'll come back and do that in about 20 minutes. So gonna have a break and have a drink, and we'll see you shortly. So we've allowed that to dry and we've got to continue with the build, and we need to continue making sure that we're going from bottom right to top left like we've done on this piece. So we've got our next piece of tower frame and we've got it bottom right to top left, but we need to do the opposite side to this one. So we turn this over once, turn it over again, and then we need to then glue this on top. So it's bottom right to top left. So make sure you get that around the right way, and I'm going to glue this in place and then we'll come back. When you're pushing this next piece on, use your finger and thumb here and hold on to the side section. So when you push down on here, you're not putting too much pressure and you're holding the framework together here. Otherwise you could end up damaging this. So be very, very careful when you do these parts, okay? Once they're all in place, and they fit precisely, so just be careful. Just get your damp brush and run along the inside, getting rid of any excess glue on both sides and around the corners, and again on all corners. And then if you want to run another bit of glue up there, you're more than welcome to, but this is pretty solid. And obviously at some stage when we add this side panel, we're then going to glue all the pieces together. So I'm going to allow that part to dry now. That won't need to dry as long. Let's give it 5 minutes and then we'll come back and do another section. So that's the 2 opposite sides done, and we've still got a lot of flexibility in. And I bet you're thinking, Steve, what have I bought? Assure you this will go very, very rigid soon, but again flexible, so be careful. So now we're on to the 3rd piece, and we're going from bottom right to top left diagonally. So we're literally placing this on top. We'll glue this in place, we'll hold it in position like we did on the other piece, and then we'll come back and tell you what we will go and do from there. So when we're gluing it, we are literally just adding glue to the indent parts of these frames. We're not adding glue all over it, it's just literally on the inside, so when you fit that top on, it will bond. The bonding comes later when we do the side panel, so literally just glue the insets of each of these panels. Okay, so you've now done the third section, you've gone round and wiped all the glue off. So now we can join this section to the side sections. So we're going to be running a bead of glue along the inside of this piece here, and then it's literally grabbing hold of the two pieces and pinching them together and making sure they're flush. However, I have done on the previous model, I left a little bit of a ridge. I don't know whether you can see that. The only downside is obviously when you come to the joining sections, it is level, but I quite like the look of that. But you do it how you want to do. But as you can see, if I've left it as it is and then you run along the side, let me get my paintbrush, you can see there's a small ridge. So you could literally glue there and pinch it in. But when you come to the middle here, obviously it is flush. But you're going to add a panel to go over the side. But best thing to do, run a bead of glue, just move it out slightly, put your small piece of brush in between, and then literally you can go in and pinch them together and just get your fingers in between, or use your tweezers. Go along and do this side, get this correct, and then you can turn it over, and then you can do this one as well. That will then bond the that section together. Okay, so I'm going to go along and do that, and I'll come back and show you how I've got on. So what I'm doing here is I'm just getting my tweezers and I'm just raising them up, and then I'm using my left hand just to pinch them together. Unfortunately, I'm doing this on the phone, so I'm holding the phone at the moment, but then left hand just to hold it and then pinch them together, and they bond quite quickly. As you can see, that's gone against there. So I've done from there to the middle panel, and I've glued that piece first. Now when that's dry, I'll go and do this piece here. Once I've done that, I'll turn it over and do the other piece. So I'll continue to do that piece and I'll come back. So I've now gone along this section all the way down, just having glue in between, using my tweezers to pinch them together. Now I'm happy that that's drying nicely. What I now want to do is to tip this on its side, and then I want to run a bead of glue on the inside of the frame, and just run a small bit of glue all the way up, and then just wipe any excess off. This will give it the extra strength, so that's the next part for me to do. So I've run my bead of glue along with my paintbrush, and then I've damped it again and gone over it again just to make sure it's all come off nicely. And then we need to go and do exactly the same to this long piece here, because we've done that side over there. We now need to go and do this side here. So I'll go and do that and come back to you. So things are now starting to take shape, and we've done 3 sides to our 4-side tower, and we're still correct. We're going from bottom right to top left, bottom right to top left, and obviously around the ladder one. Now this is still drying, and obviously we've still got this section to do, but it's standing up and it's starting to become a little bit more rigid. Now at the point of filming this, the wired and LED kit version isn't available, but I would strongly suggest at this point, if you're buying the kit with the LED and the wiring, is that you stop here building your kit, because you are going to need to thread your wire down the tower at some point. Now obviously in the corners, if I can show you, and if it will allow me to scan in, you'll see in each corner there is a 1mm hole. So I've allowed it so you can put it on any corner, and you need to thread some wire. Now I would suggest, before you put this 4th side on, because it will make life a lot easier, is to get your wire and thread it through, and depending on which side you want, you might just want to add a dab of glue on it to keep it in position. Thread it all the way down, allow it to come out at the end and have excess play at the other end, and the same at the tower end is to get your wire out. Once you've done your wire and you're happy that you know it's in position, then I suggest you put your top panel of the tower in place to give it its rigidity. If you put this top panel on now, it's going to be an absolute bugger to get wires in there, and I don't want you breaking it. Although it is very flexible stuff, the model board, I think at this stage adding the wiring is most probably your best bet. So if you've got that kit, allow this to dry and then add your wire. Once that's done, come back and we'll do the top one. As this is a non-wired kit, we're going to add this top panel on, and then we're going to allow it to dry, and then we'll come back. So there we go. So far so good. That's the last of the 4 of the tower panel pieces, and all that leaves us to do is to glue these pieces together again like we've done. So I'm going to do that. Once I've done that, I'm going to put this aside. I'm going to leave it aside for a good hour or so, just to bond and let it fully dry, and then we can come back and add the base and think about adding the top gantry and doing some priming. So I shall glue these and then we'll come back. While I'm gluing that 4th panel, I'm just making sure that I can put the base, the tower into the base, so the legs are joined up correctly. So I've just checked that, and that's all fitting there nicely. So what I'll do is I'll then complete, I've still got this one run on the far corner to glue together, and then we can leave it there and let it dry. Before we add the top of the tower, we've got to fit the wiring box on, and it makes sense to do it before. And I'm going to fit this about 4 scale feet from the bottom of the tower. Now obviously there's a small piece at the bottom of the tower that goes into the ground of the base, so I'm going to measure it from that line there, which is your rivet line, and I'm going up 28mm to the box, and then all we need to do is add a bit of glue on here, there, and a bit there, stick it in position and allow it to dry, and then that's done. And then obviously when we prime it, that will get primed at the same time. When you're fitting your wiring box, you want to obviously make sure that that hole that comes out of the back doesn't hit against one of those frames going in a diagonal position. That's of course if you're doing wiring. If you're not going to bother, it's not the end of the world. You most want to hide it, but as wiring is going to come out of there, just make sure that you can get to it. With the wiring junction box in place, it's now time to add the rivet panels. Now I'm going to keep the base on because obviously we want the rivet panels to just go to the end here, and obviously this is the side that we've glued the side frames to, so this width is wider than this side to the right and this side to the left. So you want the wider rivet plates this side, the smaller rivet sides going down here and going down there, and then the wider one on the back. And you've got to do that there, and you've also got to do it in the middle. On the top one, we're going to use the separate small rivets, but we'll add those once we've put the gantry top in place, so we'll do that shortly. So first thing to do is to go and add all your rivet panels in place around the base and in the middle. Now these rivet panels are extremely thin and delicate, so do be careful when using them. I strongly suggest that you add the glue to your base, run the glue along there around the back of the panel, and then obviously with your tweezers pick them up, put them in place and adjust to fit. When you come to put your rivet panels on, you'll notice that if you've still got the base on, the base, because it's 4mm and here is 3mm, this will be up slightly. So get it in position, take the base off, and then move the rivet panel into position. Allow these to dry, then this will still slot inside the base. Originally I was going to go for a 3mm base, but I just thought it looked a bit too thin, so I changed it to 4mm. So and I'm not changing the tower distances now. It's easy just to move the base and just move the rivets. You can use that centerpiece there to make sure that they're in the right place. It's pretty straightforward. So there we have our rivet panels all the way around the base, and they're waiting to dry, and then I'm going to do the center ones in exactly the same, small ones on one side, larger ones on the next, and then we'll put the tower gantry top part on, and then we'll finish off with the rivets, and that completes the build, and then we can go and do a prime. And there we have the center ones all glued and in place. I think you'll say that actually sets it off really nicely, especially when that's primed. That'll blend in really well. So that's drying. So next job is to put the gantry top on and then fit the rivets underneath that as well. So we'll come back to that when that's dried in 5 minutes. We can now glue the top gantry in place. So all we need to do is to add a bead of glue around the top of the tower frame, bring up your gantry, place it over the top, and then make sure that your ladder holes are in position, push it in place, and then just square it up and make sure it's in the correct position. Hold it there for a few seconds and then leave it to dry. Once that's done, we can then add the rivets panels on the side underneath. Now that the top crane gantry area is dried, we now need to finish off the rivets to hide those joins. And again, one side has the long side, the other side has the short side. So we'll glue these on in place, and that completes the build. All that remains is that you prime the tower, which is what I've just been into the garage and done. I've actually glued I'm going to use this base, so I know this is the one I'm going to use on this one. So I've glued it, and obviously then I've worn a glove and basically held the base, and then literally sprayed the tower in a grey primer. So that's all done. And just fully drying. So that completes the build of the O-gauge tower yard light without any LED lights. Any questions, obviously get in touch via the Facebook page or on the Railway Laser Lines product page support. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.